Okay, we're going to go over question number 6 from 2016, the quiz that you just took. So if you haven't taken it yet, make sure you do before you watch this quiz, because we all know that integrity is more important than your grade. With that said, let's go ahead and get started. 2016 number 6, it gives us a table of values for f, f prime, g, and g prime, and it tells us that f and g have continuous second derivatives. That means they are twice differentiable, which means f and g are both differentiable and continuous. The table above gives values for all of the values I just listed, and then part A, it says let k equal f of g of x. Write an equation of the line tangent to the graph of k at x equals 3. So if I want a tangent line, there's two things I need to know. I need to know a point and a slope. So I need to know the value of k at 3, and I need to know the slope of k at 3. So to find the slope of k, I'm going to take the derivative. So k prime of x is equal to f prime of g of x times g prime of x, because I applied the chain rule here. And then when I go to plug in 3, k prime of 3 equals f prime of g of 3 times g prime of 3. And then we're going to figure out what all those values are based on the table. So g of 3 is 6, and g prime of 3 is 2, so we'll plug those values in. So we end up with f prime of 6 times 2. And then f prime of 6 as a result, f prime of 6 is 5, so we end up with 5 times 2, which is 10. So we know the slope of the tangent line. Now we need to figure out the point of tangency. So we need to take 3 and plug it into our k function. So this will say k of 3 equals f of g of 3. And then again, we're going to go back to our table to evaluate those things. So g of 3 is 6. And then we have to figure out what f of 6 is. F of 6 is 4. And so we end up with k of 3 equals 4. And our tangent line will be y minus 4 equals 10 times x minus 3. You do not have to convert this to slope-intercept form. This is the equation of the tangent line, so leave it like this. Point values, you're going to get 1 point for figuring out what k prime of x is, so 1 point for this line here. You're going to get 1 point for figuring out the slope of the tangent line, so essentially k prime of 3 getting 10. And then you're going to get 1 point for your final answer, your tangent line here. Anyways, part B now. Part B says let h of x equal g of x divided by f of x, and we're looking for h prime of 1. So we need to take the derivative of h, and so we need to use the quotient rule here. So remember, it's the derivative of the top times the bottom minus the derivative of the bottom times the top all over the bottom squared. So we end up with g prime times f minus f prime times g all over f squared. And then because we want to know h prime of 1, we're going to take 1 and plug it into our x values. And then we're going to use our chart again to figure out all those values. So g prime of 1, is 8, f of 1 is 6, f prime of 1 is 3, and g of 1 is 2. So we can plug in all those values there. And then simplify this, so we end up with negative 48 minus 6 over 36, which simplifies to negative 54 over 36, or negative 3 over 2. Points on this guy, you're going to get 1 point for figuring out what h prime of x is, so 1 point for this line here. And then you're going to get 2 points for the correct answer. So knowing that you needed to plug all these values in, and then simplifying it down to negative 3 halves. In fact, you didn't need to simplify it to negative 3 halves. Once you got to this point right here, you could have stopped. Because remember, you don't have to simplify any numeric answers. In fact, if you do, you're putting yourself in a position to make a mistake, and we don't want you to make a mistake, because if you do make the mistake, then you won't get that final answer point. So just don't simplify. That's the best way to go about it. For part C, it's saying evaluate the integral from 1 to 3 of f double prime of 2x dx. Now, if you know your integrals, you know that you need to take the antiderivative of this. Well, the antiderivative of f double prime is f prime. But because I don't just have f double prime of 2x, I have to be careful when I take that antiderivative. I notice that I have a constant multiple inside. So if I take that that constant multiple and divide my antiderivative by it, I would end up with 1/2 f prime of 2x as my antiderivative. I want to make sure, though, that I take the derivative of this to make sure it matches my integrand. If it doesn't match my integrand, then I did something wrong and I don't want to continue. So the derivative of this is going to be 1/2 f prime of 2x and then times 2 because of the chain rule. So when I multiply it by that times 2, it's going to cancel out the 1/2 and I'll be left with f double prime of 2x. So from here I'm going to plug in 3 and plug in 1 and then subtract. So when I plug in 3, 3 times 2 is 6, and then 1 times 2 is 2, so I just did that work in my head, and then we use the table to evaluate f prime of 6 and f prime of 2, and then simplify from there, we get 7/2. If you don't see it that way, if you can't figure out the antiderivative that fast, you can always revert to u substitution. If you do u substitution, then you would say let u equal 2x, and then take the derivative in respect to x, isolate dx, and then remember you have to rework your upper and your lower bounds. So your upper bound would be 6 and your lower bound would be 2. And then we go ahead and plug all of that information into our integral expression. So now we have an integral from 2 to 6 of f double prime of u, and then instead of dx we put 1/2 of du. Then when I go to take this antiderivative, the 1/2 is just a constant multiple, so I can take it out. And then the antiderivative of f double prime of u is just f prime of u. And then we'll plug in 6 and 2 into our f prime function. And you can see at this point that that is the same as this line here. So it took us all this work to get down to here. You do not have to show all this work. If you see it right away like this, then go for it. I'm just doing this to show you if you didn't see the quick antiderivative. And then from there you plug in, again, simplify, and you get your answer. As far as points go on this, you're going to get 2 points for your antiderivative and then 1 point for your answer. So 2 points for having the correct antiderivative, so either having 1/2 f prime of 2x from 1 to 3, or 1/2 f prime of u from 2 to 6, and then 1 point for your final answer from there. So that wraps up question number 6 from 2016. Go ahead and grade yourself. Please be honest when you're grading yourself and input your answers into Socrative for the last 2 problems. So for number 6 of 2017 and number 6 of 2017, input those answers. And then your next problem is a you-do problem, and that will be question number 6 of 2019. Notice we're going a little bit out of order here, so don't just go down the list here. Do number 6 of 2019. Set a timer for 10 minutes. This is a non-calculator problem again. And then come back and watch the next video to grade yourself. And I'll talk to you later.